Oh, hey everybody, welcome. Barb Nangle, Boundaries Coach. This is the fragmented to whole monthly workshop in the Barb's World section of the shit show. And so are each of you both in 12-step recovery?
I am not.
You're not? Okay. And how about you, Sarah? Are you? Okay. So
I
what we're going
am.
to cover is something that is often covered in step 6. And so the idea is we become entirely ready. In the 12 steps, it says entirely ready to have our defects of character removed. And to me, it doesn't have to be classified as a defect of character, but if you have a long-standing pattern of behavior that you're just fucking done with, this worksheet can be really, really powerful. And part of it is that you're learning to act as if. And so what I did this with 4 of my most insidious defects of character. And the one that like had the most profound effect on me was stopping gossiping. So that's the example that I'm going to use. So I didn't know that talking negatively behind my boss's back for 19 years was gossip, which is kind of funny because that's sort of the definition of gossip is like talking negatively behind someone's back for years on end. And I was just astonished when I learned that I gossip. But one thing that we learn in ACA when we do the 12 steps is that like I'm a product of my environment. And so what happened to me. So what we look at in ACA is what happened to me. We still get that, like what's my part? What are the things that I did like we do in other 12-step programs. But in ACA, we're like I can still get at what happened, what I did by way of what happened to me. So this is how I think about it. Hi Megan, welcome. Glad you're here.
Hi, Barb.
Um, I
Thank you.
I think of it like this. What happened to me was I grew up in a family that engaged in indirect communication, which means you never went to the person that you had difficulty with. You always went to everybody around them. And so what that means is this is a communication pattern that was laid down in my family before I was born. I had no hope of knowing how to directly communicate with other people. So what I did, my part is that I gossiped. Now, if I had done the 12 steps in Overeaters Anonymous first, I would have been like, "Oh my God, I'm like selfish, self-seeking, all that stuff. Like I'm a horrible person." But I did the steps in ACA first and it was like, "Oh, I'm a product of my environment. Of course I fucking gossip because my family didn't talk. You don't solve problems, right? You just make them worse." So when I realized that I was gossiping and I knew that I needed to gossip, I did a little bit of research. And I'm just using gossip as the example for this exercise. It doesn't mean that, I'm just using it to illustrate like how to use this worksheet that we're going to talk about. So I did a little bit of research and I was like, what is gossip and how do you stop and all that? And one of the things that I learned was that if you're solution oriented, it may not be gossip. Like if you're just talking about problems, that's gossip. So what I did was I would still gossip, but I'd like throw in some solution, like to be like, oh, well, I'm talking about solution here. And then I realized, no, this is not like behavior. That's an integrity. And I started to realize like, oh my God, gossip feels so fucking good to me. Like, why does it feel so good? So I started talking to other people in recovery. And actually, I was at a party with a bunch of people from recovery, and I 2 people in a row, I was like, yes. So I said to them, why does gossip feel so fucking good? And one of them said, well, you get to make yourself feel better than other people. And I was like, oh shit. And then the other one said, you get to continue blaming other people for your problems. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. So what that points to is my victim mentality. For me personally, coming out of victim mentality was hands down the biggest paradigm shift of my recovery. And so this is just another way that it showed up. So I it was really, really hard for me to stop. So the way that this worksheet works, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And and if you haven't seen it, I've already uploaded the worksheet and a podcast on acting as if, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what exactly acting as if means, especially as adult children. Like people are like, how is that different than pretending? I've been pretending my whole fucking life. I'm tired of pretending. let's not pretend. And it's very different than that. So the podcast will explain that. But essentially, when you're pretending, you're not trying to improve your life. You're trying to like hide and get away with things and like not be seen or not be judged or not be abandoned. Whereas when you're acting as if, you're engaging in the behaviors that people that have what you want will engage in. So that's, the podcast is there for that. So the illustration here I'm using is the behavior I'm looking to change right now is my gossiping behavior. So I've already mentioned, like, the first thing we're going to do is, what has this behavior done for you? So what did I get from it? So what I got from it was I got to feel better than other people. I got to feel like my boss is the problem, not me. So I get to blame the boss, which blame is another indicator of being in victim mentality. So, I wrote that out. So what you'll do is you'll figure, you can do this on multiple behaviors, but you want to do one worksheet per behavior. And I got to tell you, like, I have seen this exercise work for so many people with some really deeply entrenched things. So the first was, what is it doing for you? And then what has it been doing to you? So I said, I got a bad reputation. And so when I'm focused on others, I'm not focused on myself. And the problem with focusing on others is that you can't control other people. And when your focus is always out there, you're not focused in here, which is where you can actually make a difference. And when you're focused on gossiping all the time, you're focused on problems, which means you're not focused on solutions. And then what I realized over time, I didn't realize this right away when I did this work, was that I personally had created a culture of expectation at my work that we don't focus on problems, excuse me, we don't focus on solutions, we focus on problems, and that, the boss is the root of the problem. And if only she would change, then everything would be okay. And I worked at Yale University at the time, and where I worked, every year we had a new crop of pre-doctoral psychology fellows, and every 2 years we had a new crop of postdoctoral psychology fellows. So we were like a training facility. These people were mental health professionals. Not one of them ever said to me, "This is really unhealthy behavior." They all participated in it with me. So I trained these young professionals, go out into the world and bitch about your boss, right? So it wasn't innocent that I was doing this. And then, of course, I was constantly besmirching my boss's reputation. And when I finally stopped gossiping, what I did was started focusing on solutions. And I took responsibility for things that were well within my purview. I stopped expecting my boss to be a different person. I wanted her to show up on time. I wanted her to follow through on what she said she was going to do. I wanted her to stop blowing people off. I wanted her to stick to the agenda of the meeting that she created. So I basically wanted her to be reliable, and she hadn't been reliable since the day I started working with her. So it also helped me get my expectations in alignment with reality. So first we've got, what is it doing for you? Then what is it doing to you? And then what you want to do, this is so key, is you want to list on the left side, like, you don't need this handout. You can just read this handout. You don't need to print it out, just on a piece of notebook paper. I would recommend listing at least 10 behaviors, like actual things that you do that illustrate that you have this behavior problem. So, let's see. I told others that D told everyone she'd be there when she knew very well she wouldn't be. I told A that J was an angry person with a chip on her shoulder. I told colleagues that B is the weak link in our team. So here I am. This isn't just one person that I'm talking about. I'm talking about other people, right? So you write all these behaviors on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, you ask yourself, okay, if I was no longer acting out of this behavior pattern, what would I do? Or if you don't know, then you start looking at people who are behaving in the ways that you appreciate and admire, and you start making note of what did they do. So for the first one, I told them that she told everyone she'd be there when she knew she wouldn't. So keep my comments to myself. Like I don't need to tell people that. If someone wants to create their own bad reputation, I can let them do that. I don't need to like be a megaphone for their bad reputation. Um, I told them someone was an angry person, but keep my comments to myself. One of the phrases that my first sponsor taught me that I literally walked around saying constantly for like 2.5 years was like, bless her, change me, or bless them, change me. And I think of it as almost like a micro version of the serenity prayer because I'm like, bless them, they need my blessing, and I'm the one that needs to change. So I can't change them. So I'd be like, bless her, change me, bless him, change me, bless her, change me. So I don't need to be making comments about these people. Actually, I see that I have that same thing here. So I told colleague B that, that B is the weak link in the chain. Keep comments to myself and see how I can strengthen the team. So if I think someone is the weak link in the chain of my team, is it really going to help my team to say that? Like, what can I do to either help strengthen that person or strengthen the rest of the team around that person? But I'm not going to be doing any of that when I'm focused on what I believe is their shitty behavior, right? So, what happens when you list out these new behaviors is you have a plan of action. You know what to do. You're not going to be able to do it in the beginning, just so you know, like you will not. But you have like a plan, like this is how I'm going to behave. And so when this is actually, when you're doing step 6, we ask our higher power to help us. And so we're becoming entirely willing to change our behavior. Well, when you've made this list of new behaviors, when you've made this plan of action, you have demonstrated to your higher power, look, this is my willingness. I'm so willing that I thought this through. I wrote this down and I created a plan of action. So you don't have to do this by yourself. If you have a higher power, then it's time to call in your higher power and say, okay, please help me engage in these new behaviors. And, I'm here to tell you, you're not going to be perfect at it. I do a nightly inventory. I don't do it every single night, but I probably do it at least 5 nights a week. And um, it, it's kind of shocking to me how infrequently these behaviors come up, but I've also been doing this for, going on 10 years. But I would say that the difficult behavior of mine that comes up the most often, it's gossip. And to me, gossip is tied to so many of my other behaviors, like the unrealistic expectations, the focus on other people, the negativity, the victim mentality. And so when I really dealt with this, and I mean, I'm going to say like I cleaned up my gossiping by well over 95%. It's almost like it had a domino effect, which is one of the reasons why I like to use this as to demonstrate this exercise because it's tied to so many different things. It's such an unhealthy behavior, but it still comes up for me. And I think, for me, the most difficult place for me to not gossip is in the workplace. And here's why. Because when you're in the workplace, it's natural that at times you have to talk about roles and responsibilities and sometimes people. So it's easy to go down the slippery slope where we're having a legitimate conversation about roles and responsibilities. And then it slides into character assassination because you start out talking about something that you need to talk about in the workplace. And then it can so easily slide down. So that's where it's the most difficult for me. So the last page, it gives you plenty of room to write this stuff out. Like I said, you don't actually need to print this out. I would just, save a copy of it and then write in your notebook. But I want to stop there and open it up for questions, comments. If anybody wants to like have me try to help them think through something that they're working on, I'm happy to do some on the spot coaching right now if you guys are interested, but let me know what's coming up for you.
Oh, I was just going to comment and say I think this is helpful because I actually have been having sort of like issues at work myself with I have a coworker that I'm close to that sits right in front of me. And sometimes I have to, she used to do my job. She has a different job now. So sometimes I just have to ask her things just because she knows more than I know, if that makes sense. But I find that a lot of times I will complain about other people that are processing things before me and they're not doing their job like effectively. They're not putting in, the correct information or things that I need to do my job. And
Mhm,
I'll just like kind of vent to her all the time about this. And she'll also vent to me, which I think
mhm,
I opened the door, but now like she'll also
mhm,
come to me and vent sometimes
mhm,
for the same reason because we're just,
mhm,
I guess we're, but we're being like negative Nellies basically and
mhm,
complaining
mhm.
about everyone.
Yeah. So what I did, Audrey, when I decided, okay, this is it, this shit has got to stop, my smaller team, which was mostly like admin kind of people, they all knew that I was in recovery. So I felt comfortable saying to them, you all know that I'm in recovery. I'm really trying to change my behaviors. It's come to my attention. My boss's name was Nadia. So I said, it's come to my attention that I gossip about Nadia a lot, and I really want to stop that. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. If you hear me gossiping about Nadia, I want you to go like this. Like, don't say anything to me because I'll be like riddled with shame. But if you
Right,
wag your finger, I'll know what you're talking about. And so what that did was it signaled them, like it gave me accountability. And B, it also signaled them, we're not gossiping. I'm not gossiping with you about Nadia anymore.
right.
And so what I started doing was either going directly to her or creating policies and procedures. And I ended up developing this whole new protocol with my team where we started meeting more frequently and opening up the channels of communication between us because we kept waiting for her to be a channel of communication and she just wasn't and she was never going to be. So it's like, well, why don't we act on what's actually happening, which is she's a roadblock, and then just go on a different road and create our own roads, you know? And we ended up having way more communication, much higher morale. We used to, like before all this, we would run into each other in the kitchen or the hallway and have like an impromptu meeting. And whereas we'd have a scheduled meeting waiting around for the boss who wouldn't show up and we would bitch and complain, or we would talk about, like, because we knew we had time, we would talk about and catch up and talk about our lives. And so we switched it so that if we ran into each other in the hallway or in the kitchen, we would chit chat about like our lives and catch up with each other. And then we had meetings that we scheduled where we actually had an agenda that we followed. And it was like, oh my God, we felt so much more productive and communicative and not shitty about talking about the boss all the time. And we all took I mean, I took a lot of responsibility and we all took responsibility and we got to make a lot more stuff happen and we became solution oriented. And it was just like, wait a minute, I could have been doing this for the last 18 years. Like, what? But
Right.
I just didn't know. And I'm not dumb, and like I have a master's degree in sociology. I'm an educated woman, but I was like, how did I not know that this was gossip? And it's because this dysfunction is so fucking entrenched
Hmm.
that you don't see things as dysfunctional or abnormal or traumatic when that's all you know? So I would say if you decide that you're going to stop complaining, you also get to decide, am I going to inform my colleague about this or am I just going to stop? Like you get to decide whether you want to bring her in on that. But personally, I know I've had a couple of times in my life where I've asked for a hand signal from someone rather than words because it feels less, I don't know, like threatening is the word that comes to mind, but that might be, something that you might want to do if you decide you want to speak to your colleague about this. But what this means now, Audrey, is if you're going to stop complaining about these people to your colleague, that the people to speak to are the ones that are making the errors.
Right. Right. Exactly. I think we get a lot of pushback from them, but I think also I need to just accept that, like, I have this thing where it's like basically what I'm doing is billing orders that are supposed to be ready to go, and then I'm missing like a bunch of information and I can't bill them. So
Mm-hmm.
I get upset because I know that my boss is watching me and what has been ready, that's supposed to be ready to bill, and he's wondering why I'm not billing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like get in a tizzy, like running around thinking, oh, I got to fix this right away, and go into like fix mode. And it's like, it's not your fault. Like, you don't have what you need. That's not on you.
Right.
That's on somebody
Right.
else. But it's
Yeah.
like that same mentality of like, you know, what can I control? Like, where's my control at? What
Right.
level? I'm always
Yeah.
trying to control
Yeah.
everything. That's my problem.
Right. 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 So you can send it back to the person and say, XYZ are missing. And until it's filled in, I'm not going to be able to bill this person.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Problem solved. And if they keep
Right.
getting shit pushed back to them, then they're eventually going to start doing it. Or they're
Right.
not. And then you bring it to your boss and say, this is the 15th time that I've sent this back to this person. What can we do about it?
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
I think that's a better way to be. And also because I do even say to this coworker, and she'll say it to me too, like I'll be like, "Oh, we're just negative Nelly," or we're just, like it's like we know we're bringing a negative energy, but we still feel the need to like, you know,
Mhm.
be gossipy or whatever to each other.
Right.
We need to
Yeah.
share it with each other for
Yeah.
some reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Like I used to tell myself, "Oh, I'm just like corroborating or I'm commiserating." I don't need to corroborate or commiserate for 19 fucking years. I've got the corroboration, right? It's pretty
Right.
clear. I've vented. It's not like that's just bullshit. Like for me, it was because it was like, like how many years is going to be enough for you to feel like you have corroboration? You know that she's unreliable. The problem is that I expected her to be unreliable. And what this makes me think of is I realized, like for me, huge defective character for me, unrealistic expectations of myself, other people, and the world. But there's a difference between reasonable and unrealistic, okay? So it's reasonable for me to expect my boss, who is a professor at Yale University, highly educated woman, to be a professional, follow through, do what she says she's going to do, not blow people up. That's reasonable, right? But for her specifically, it's unrealistic because I have 19 years of evidence that she's never going to be that way. So in the
Right.
world, it is reasonable to expect someone to be like that. But for that woman, not realistic. So I can continue to suffer by saying it's perfectly reasonable for me to believe this, but it's not realistic.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I have the same problem. This is my same problem, is that I'm
Mhm.
expecting people to do things they've never done,
Right.
that
Yeah.
they just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm in Overeaters Anonymous, and there's a daily reader called Voices of Recovery. And September 5th, I remember very specifically because this reading just like got me to the core. And it's essentially about this issue. Like I expected people to be a person of their word, to follow to do what they say they're going to do. And those are my expectations for me. And if I want to keep having those expectations for other people, I'm going to suffer. So I can still be disappointed when people don't do those things, but I don't need to let it ruin my day. And I was like, oh my God, this reading is for me. And it was like the day I bought the book, that it happened to be that day. And I was like, bam, right in the head. Like I get to change my expectations and get them in line with who this person actually is.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Yeah. Megan or Sarah, any comments or questions from you?
Hey, yeah, I had a question. Um, I was just kind of trying to identify maybe some unwanted or undesirable behaviors I'd like to change.
Mm-hmm.
And a big one for me is like, trying to control other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that actually already kind of came up earlier, not this week, it's Monday, last week, um, is like when my husband gets angry about something, I freak the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel like that kind of falls under the controlling in a way
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I do a lot of things to like try to fix his feelings to try to make him not angry, which
Hmm.
I know is not healthy.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering if you would kind of like
Hmm.
lump those together or work on them separately.
That's a really good question. I mean, the thing about controlling other people's behavior is so fucking broad that it might
Yeah.
help you to just start with your husband's anger first, just to get a feel for how this works. Because that's a nice narrow, it's not nice, but it's a narrow thing. And I just want to affirm you, like as an adult child, of course it tears you up when he's angry because angry
Oh no.
people are fucking scary. And I think as women, especially angry men, because they're bigger and louder, and then maybe our fathers were angry people, and it's like it's can be terrifying. So of course you are, and of course you're going into controlling behaviors because this is what we did as children. We try to like manage ourselves so they don't become angry, and like learning that his anger is not your responsibility. He may be getting angry in response to something you're doing or saying, but also gets to be angry. People get to have whatever feelings they're having. And so I think, partially looking at this stuff, but also like protecting yourself, like psychologically and emotionally when this is happening. Like, what do you need to do that's not controlling him behavior, but that is caring for you behavior so that you can then go about engaging in these new behaviors. So, like thinking through this stuff ahead of time is going to be super key for you because when he gets angry, in at least initially, until you start figuring out like what can I do to take care of myself, you're going to be triggered and you're not going to be able to go to these new behaviors because you're not your you know frontal lobe will not be accessible to you. So do you have
Exactly how it's
things?
been going so far.
Okay, so do you have things that you do to take care of yourself in the moment when you get triggered by things like that that have been effective for you?
Um, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have some like nervous system, like
Mm-hmm.
calming, regulating exercises that have been very helpful in other situations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think for me, one of the most effective things when people have big feelings coming at me is literally putting my hands up. Like you're literally blocking the energy. I don't know why it works. I don't give a shit. I don't know why electricity works. It doesn't matter. And I think also, like, do you have like a mostly cordial relationship with your husband?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend, Sarah, is that when things are going well with your husband, have a conversation with him and say, I'm realizing that I try to control you when you get angry. And I really want to stop that. So I'm going to start trying some new things. One of which like could be I need to leave the room when you get angry. I'm not leaving, but I need to go take care of myself. And the way that I'm going to do that is by creating physical space between you and I. And I want you to know ahead of time that I'm going to try that because in order for me to stop trying to control you, I've got to get my system regulated. And it's not going to happen when you're angry. So you get to be angry. You don't have to stop being angry, but I also have to take care of myself. So letting, especially if you have a mostly cordial relationship, then hopefully he will be on board with you stopping trying to control him. Like I see that I'm trying to control you, and it's really not so much about controlling you. It's about protecting myself, but I realize I'm going about it in the wrong way. I should be working in here and I'm trying to work out there. And that's one of the hugest tasks of adult children is keep the focus on ourselves rather than
Hmm.
out there. I mean, that's a huge, huge task for us. So does that feel like a conversation that you might be able to have with him?
It does. I
Good.
mean, it makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of wild to think like,
Hmm.
wow, like actually talk to him about this,
Yeah.
about a
And
problem.
like, I mean, he knows you're trying to control him, but if you just name
Oh
it,
yeah,
he might be like, fuck, you're doing that? Like, you know. And does he know
yeah,
that you're, in recovery and trying to change your ways and all that?
he does. He
Good.
does. And
Yeah.
he knows like my family history. He knows that I get scared when he's angry or upset about something.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah.
so
Yeah, and just remember, like, people get to have whatever feelings they're having, and they're not yours, and they're not yours to fix or to change or to manage. And, if you start having conversations with him like this, then maybe he'll start having conversations with you, which might allow him to not get so angry. Right? Like I mean, I don't know your relationship or what he's getting angry about and stuff, but you know, learning to communicate about feelings is one of the most important things a couple can do to improve their relationship. It's probably the most important thing they can do in terms of improving their relationship, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would absolutely start with like listing out ways that you try to get your husband to not be angry on the left side, and then on the right side, what's essentially the opposite. It's often the opposite of that, but there could be multiple opposites. But, or if you can't think of anything, then start asking like other people in recovery or people that have healthy romantic relationships. What do you do when your husband is angry? Or what do you do when your wife is angry? Like, how do you handle it? How do you not try to control them? And start gathering, suggestions from other people. So I would start with that and see how that goes. And then, like after you've done some experimenting with that and feel like, oh, this is working for me, then I might go to, I still feel like control is so broad that you might think of another area that you try to control, but who knows? I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It could be just like list all my controlling behaviors, you know?
I think I could fill a
Yeah.
book with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and also I want you to I hope that you will give yourself grace for this. Like you're doing this for a reason. You're doing it because you want to take care of yourself. And so this is info, not ammo. So this is information for you to learn, integrate, and grow from. It's not ammunition to beat yourself up. So when you think info, not ammo, it's a way for you to go from self-judgment to self-compassion. And I think of it like this. When you say info, not ammo, you're using curiosity. Curiosity, I love it because it's neutral. So curiosity is the bridge between self-judgment and self-compassion. So if you want to go from judging yourself to having compassion for yourself, then be curious. Like, what's going on here? What might I do differently? Right? And that's what you put in the right-hand column.
cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. How about you, Megan? Anything you want to share or ask about? Well, maybe she can't get to the mute button. Um, is there anything else? I got about 10 more minutes if you guys want to ask or share about anything else. I don't know if any of you are interested, but I have something that I'm offering. It's called Boundaries for the Holidays, Prioritizing Your Precious Resources of Love, Money, Time, and Energy. It's an 11-page worksheet where you will think through what are my values or what are my goals in terms of my precious resources of love, money, time, and energy? Where am I actually probably giving these things away? And then where's the disconnect? And then what are the boundaries that I might be able to put in place? And then also looking at patterns, like is there a pattern among all those four different resources? And then there's also two podcasts that go along with it in the bundle for about boundaries for the holidays. So I'm gonna drop the link in the chat here. It's $25 for that whole thing. I don't know if, any of you guys are interested in that, but I figure just because Thanksgiving is next week, that it might be something that you might be interested in. Um, and I found that I personally so I got into recovery in the spring. And so my first holiday season, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing when it came to boundaries. And I messed up all over the place. And so what I've done is like basically figured out how to get people to not do what I did. Because what I was trying to do was control people. And then my next holiday season, I was like, oh, this is what boundaries are. And thinking through ahead of time is super helpful. Like, how do I want my holidays to be? Who do I want to spend time with? How much energy do I want to put into things? How much alone time do I need? What is my budget when it comes to gift giving? That sort of thing. So that's there for you if you are, interested in that. Is there anything else? Oh, there you are, Megan. Did you have any comments or questions?
No, I'm so sorry. I'm working. I missed a bit of it, so I'll have to
Okay.
backtrack with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Barb.
All righty. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off then if there's nothing else.
Hmm.
Bye, everybody.
Ah,
Thank you so much. Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Did you want to say something, Sarah?
I did have a question. Do you have any tips for identifying our unwanted behaviors or behaviors we like to change? I mean, I'm looking at the
Oh.
laundry list, and I think that's probably a good starting point. But I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just keep like a running log of things that are irritating you, like about yourself. Um,
Okay.
but and my guess is that if you Googled defects of character, you'll get a giant list and you can be like, nope, 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 yep, yep, nope, yep, nope, yep.
Ah,
But then also like I don't know if you're an AA or any of those other, but like, selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, like those are like really common. But sometimes we have them and we don't even realize we have them. Like the laundry list, when I first saw it, I thought I had 7. I have 13 of them. I was in such denial about my own dysfunction, never mind my family's dysfunction. So, and then, I mean, depending on how thick your skin is, you could ask other people. I don't think I could handle that. If I said, "What do you think my defects of character are?" I'd be like, "I know I asked you, but now I'm going to punch you in the face." I don't really punch people in the face, but I would want to. So I don't think I could handle that, but you might, especially like, do you have a sponsor, Sarah?
no, but I do have a group of women, like fellow travelers that we're
Yeah.
going through that yellow workbook together.
Yeah, so I wouldn't ask them what are my defects of character. Maybe ask them how did they come up with their lists and if they're willing to share them, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I could probably ask my sister. I think she'd be willing to give me
Yeah.
some, and I just like what you said, if you've got thick enough skin, I might
Yeah.
just tell her like, can you please tell me anything you think is my defective character? I'm not gonna respond, and then we're gonna hang up the phone.
Okay, good. Yeah. And the other thing that really helped me in the
Ugh.
beginning in ACA was to call them defenses of character. That sort of took the wall down for me because I mean, that's what they are. Like their responses to the world. They served us when we were children, and we know that because we made it out of childhood alive. They're just not serving us as adults. So, my defenses of character, that might be a little bit more gentle for you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy the week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye
Happy
now.
Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thanks.